A black man pulls into a quiet suburban driveway in a luxury SUV worth nearly $500,000. Within seconds, neighbors are dialing 911. Phones come out. Accusations fly. They say the car is stolen. They say he doesn't belong, he doesn't argue. He doesn't explain. He just stands there because he knows something they don't. And in a matter of minutes, every person watching will realize they made a mistake they can't undo. What happens next will expose more than one lie and change every life on that street forever. Comment and tell us where you're watching from, and subscribe for more powerful stories. Cameron Harrison's life followed a rhythm he had built carefully, deliberately, over years of discipline and sacrifice. At 38, his days were filled with meetings, deadlines, and decisions that affected dozens of employees who trusted his leadership. He had earned that responsibility the hard way, through long nights, failed ideas, and relentless focus. Success didn't arrive suddenly. It arrived slowly, piece by piece. That afternoon was no different. Cameron returned from a business trip tired but satisfied, the kind of exhaustion that comes from progress. He guided his Rolls-Royce Cullinan into the driveway of the home he owned in Briarwood Estates, a quiet, manicured neighborhood known for its privacy and prestige. The house wasn't a statement, it was a milestone. A reward for years of work most people never saw. Inside those walls was a life rooted in stability, family dinners, weekend routines, and a sense of earned peace. Cameron believed in community. He believed in showing up, giving back, and existing without apology. He had done everything right, everything expected, and more. What he didn't realize was how closely he was being watched. Across the street, behind carefully trimmed hedges and half-drawn blinds, eyes followed his movements with suspicion instead of curiosity. To some, the car wasn't a symbol of achievement. It was a question mark. To others, it was an accusation waiting to be formed. Briarwood Estates was quiet on the surface, sprinklers ticking, lawns humming, the illusion of calm perfectly intact. But beneath that calm lived assumptions that had never been challenged. Cameron felt at home on that street. Others had already decided he didn't belong there. As he stepped out of his vehicle and moved toward his front door, unaware of the thoughts forming around him, something invisible shifted. A judgment was being made, a decision was being justified, and within minutes that ordinary afternoon would turn into a moment no one on that street would ever forget. Cameron Harrison didn't notice it at first, the pause in the neighborhood's rhythm. The sprinklers kept ticking. A lawn mower droned somewhere down the street. But behind the quiet, attention had shifted toward him. From living room windows and front porches, eyes followed his every movement as he unloaded his bag and closed the door of his Rolls-Royce. Across the street, Gerald Patterson stood frozen near his window, phone already in his hand. He had lived in Briarwood Estates for over 3 decades. He knew every car, every routine, every face he believed belonged. And in his mind, Cameron Harrison didn't fit any of them. The car was too expensive. The presence felt wrong to him. Without stepping outside, without asking a single question, Gerald dialed 911. Moments later, another call followed, then another. Cameron was inside his garage when he heard it, the sound of tires slowing abruptly, the unmistakable weight of authority arriving unannounced. When he stepped back outside, 2 police cruisers were already positioned near his driveway. Officers exited carefully, hands hovering near their belts, eyes locked on him instead of the house behind him. The shift was immediate. His own driveway no longer felt like home. It felt like a stage. "Sir, step away from the vehicle," one officer instructed, voice firm, cautious. Cameron complied without hesitation. He had learned long ago that calm was not optional in moments like this. It was survival. He raised his hands slowly, heart steady but alert. He explained that this was his home, that the car was his, that he lived there. The words were clear. The response was skepticism. On the lawns around them, neighbors began to gather. Gerald Patterson stood front and center, arms crossed, watching with the confidence of someone certain he was right. Richard Thornton lingered nearby, nodding along, reinforcing the unspoken accusation. Sandra Wells positioned herself across the street, phone raised, documenting the moment not with concern, but with judgment. Whispers spread, phones recorded. A quiet street became an audience. One officer asked for identification. Cameron told them where his wallet was and moved carefully, narrating every motion. Still, the tension didn't ease. Every second stretched. Every breath felt measured. He could feel the weight of assumptions pressing in from every direction. Then something changed. A senior officer stepped forward, eyes narrowing, not with suspicion but recognition. Sergeant Morrison froze mid-step as he looked at Cameron's face. His posture shifted instantly. The tension that had filled the driveway broke like glass. "Mr. Harrison," he said carefully. The reaction was subtle but unmistakable. Officers straightened. Hands moved away from holsters. Voices softened. The tone changed not because new evidence appeared, but because recognition finally arrived. Sergeant Morrison apologized. The neighbors noticed before they heard anything. Gerald's confidence faltered. Richard took a step back. Sandra lowered her phone, suddenly unsure. The power dynamic had flipped in real time, and everyone could feel it. Cameron remained calm. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't gloat. He simply stood there as the truth settled in. The police were done questioning him. That's when Cameron spoke directly to Gerald Patterson. He addressed him by name. The recognition hit Gerald like a blow. When Cameron mentioned Whitfield Industries, when he mentioned the board, when he mentioned Gerald's son by name, the color drained from his face. Pride collapsed into panic. What Gerald thought was a moment of control had become a moment of exposure. Around them, the crowd dissolved. Richard retreated toward his house, avoiding eye contact. Sandra disappeared down the sidewalk, phone pressed tightly to her ear. The live stream running from a nearby lawn exploded with viewers, capturing every second. The accusation, the reversal, the collapse. Cameron calmly informed the officers that his security cameras had recorded everything. Audio, video, every word, every face. Sergeant Morrison nodded, understanding the weight of what had just happened. As the police prepared to leave, Cameron straightened his jacket and looked around the street, at the homes, the lawns, the people who had decided who he was without ever speaking to him. He went inside his house and closed the door. But outside, nothing could be closed. The videos were already spreading. The assumptions were already exposed. And what had started as a call meant to protect the neighborhood was now unraveling into something far bigger, something that would follow every person involved long after the street fell quiet again. Because this moment wasn't ending here, it was only beginning. By the time night fell, the street was quiet again, but the world was not. The footage spread faster than anyone could stop it. Multiple angles told the same story. A man standing in his own driveway, accused without evidence, surrounded by suspicion before a single question was asked. The moment the police tone shifted played on repeat, aggressive caution turning into immediate respect once Cameron Harrison was recognized. That contrast became the center of everything. Millions watched it unfold in real time. The internet did what it always does when truth is undeniable. Names surfaced. Histories were pulled apart. Gerald Patterson's confident posture in the video became a symbol, not of vigilance, but of entitlement. His 911 call was released, then another, then another. Patterns emerged that couldn't be explained away. 7 calls over 3 years, every call about a black person. 0 crimes. And then the story that changed everything. 2 years earlier, just blocks away, another call had been made. A teenager waiting on a sidewalk, Deshaun Carter, 19 years old, nervous, black, reported as suspicious. Police arrived. He panicked, he ran, shots followed. Deshaun survived, but he never walked again. When journalists connected the call history, the weight of it hit like a collapse. The same voice, the same language, the same assumptions. Gerald Patterson hadn't just misjudged Cameron Harrison. He had done this before, and before that, and again. The video of Deshaun Carter appeared next, him sitting in a wheelchair, hands gripping the armrests, voice steady but hollow as he described the life he lost. College plans gone, a scholarship erased, a future rewritten in a single moment of fear triggered by someone else's suspicion. The public reaction turned from outrage to reckoning. Companies moved quickly. Richard Thornton was called into a meeting he never walked out of employed. Sandra Wells watched her business collapse as clients disappeared overnight. Gerald Patterson's pension was frozen pending review. His name became inseparable from the damage left behind. But the most devastating moment came quietly. A phone call from Gerald's son. Brian Patterson had spent years building a career at Whitfield Industries, the same company Cameron Harrison helped guide at the highest level. Overnight, Brian became radioactive by association. He didn't defend his father. He couldn't. Instead, he released a public statement denouncing the actions, donating to Deshaun Carter, and asking for distance. That was the moment Gerald truly lost everything. His wife left soon after. 35 years of marriage ended not in shouting, but in silence, boxes packed, rings left behind. A house that once symbolized stability became an echo chamber of regret. Meanwhile, Cameron Harrison said very little. He didn't demand punishment. He didn't celebrate consequences. He simply released the footage and let the truth stand on its own. When asked how he felt, he said one thing: he had done nothing but exist in his own driveway. That sentence carried more weight than any accusation. As the story reached national news, one truth became impossible to ignore. This was never about a car. It was never about safety. It was about who was allowed to belong without explanation and who was forced to justify their existence. And as the fallout continued to spread, one question remained, hanging heavy over every viewer watching. How many times had this happened before, without a camera recording it? Cameron Harrison returned to his routine, but the meaning of normal had changed. He still pulled into the same driveway, still walked through the same front door, still lived in the same house he had earned. Yet something invisible now lingered in the air, a reminder that safety for some is conditional. The neighborhood moved on quickly. Sprinklers continued their schedules. Lawns stayed trimmed, but the people did not return to who they were before. Gerald Patterson sold his house within weeks, leaving behind a street that no longer welcomed him. The title of community protector vanished, replaced by a legacy he could not escape. His name became a cautionary tale rather than a point of pride. Richard Thornton rebuilt his life in another state, quieter, smaller. Sandra Wells abandoned real estate entirely. Their consequences were different, but they shared the same origin, a decision rooted in assumption rather than truth. For Deshaun Carter, the damage ran deeper. He would never get back what was taken from him. But the exposure of what happened, of who made the call and how often, brought something long denied: acknowledgement. Support followed. Medical debts were lifted. His voice, once ignored, was finally heard. From a wheelchair, he became a witness to a system that too often punishes presence instead of crime. Cameron Harrison never asked to be a symbol. He never tried to be an example. Yet his calm refusal to shrink, to explain his worth, his success, or his right to exist, became the most powerful statement of all. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't seek revenge. He let the truth stand where lies had once lived comfortably. This wasn't a story about a luxury car. It wasn't about wealth or status. It was about how quickly suspicion replaces humanity when bias goes unchecked. Millions watched because they recognized something familiar, not just in the injustice, but in the silence that often follows it. This story forced that silence to break. The question now isn't what happened on that street. The question is how many similar moments happen every day, without cameras, without consequences, without justice. And until that answer changes, these stories will keep repeating. If this story moved you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. And subscribe to Black Community Struggles for more powerful stories about justice, truth, and our community's fight to be seen. And don't forget to hit the like button. Your support helps these stories reach the people who need them most.